listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. What? Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. Adolph need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. Lineage go back to US Southern plantations. Lineage, Jim Crow and mass incarceration. Redlining lynchings. We are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one. Cousin mother intellectual. Samantha bringing fire. Anti-black we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country to win. You need our energy. You gon' see. Listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. Adolph need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.
Welcome to Reset Race, where we talk about politics, race, and how those things intersect and how those things affect those of us who are Negro, African American, descendant of slaves, here in the United States, US Freedmen, which is our preferred term, and it is what it is. So we have a guest here today. Our friend Edie is here, and she's gonna introduce herself first, and then we'll go around the table with the rest of the crew. Edie.
Hey everybody at Reset Race. Thank you for having me back. I feel so honored to be asked every time. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming, Edie. All right, so we go around the horn. Sam.
Alrighty, so I am Sam, aka the Khaleesi, and y'all know I am not. So contrary to popular belief, I effing hate talking about Brianna Joy. She turns my stomach. She hurts my soul and my spirit. And she makes me pray to my ancestors that they visit her in her sleep. So I hope everybody enjoys today's BS, because Brianna Greyjoy, you, as I keep saying, and this is not a hyperbole, you are an enemy of poor Black people. All right, go ahead, Josiah. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the folks. Killmonger.
All hail King Killmonger. I'm here. It is I, Josiah. I got some things to say. I feel away. And let's get to it.
I thought you were gonna give us a rhyme. All right. Mud, talk to us, man.
Yeah, they call me Mud. You can find me on all my social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Clubhouse @of Lineage. I got something special for the next Bitter Dose TV. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the show.
All right, cool. Thank you, everybody. I've been pushing Adolph Reed video out, the one where he admits that right wingers are pushing money into the left.
Dick, nigga. Fuck out of here, nigga. You was fake in the hood, nigga. Like that ass, nigga.
I think the career of Adolph Reed is over, and it's not because people give a fuck about his bullshit with the COVID stuff. I think he has finally split his own base because he let the cat out the bag. He exposed that some of his friends are actually working with Nazis. And we're not supposed to notice this left-right alliance that has been forming with these socialists. So his audience is pretty upset.
It's not so much Trump as that really shadowy, ugly underworld of ultra right wingers. I mean, neo-Nazis are, I don't even know what neo means in this case, right? But who ironically and unfortunately understand organizing, right? Much better than the posturing leftists do. So like they've got these various news services, and then there's shit like at the high end, Julius Krein, who has this new magazine called American Affairs. It's funny because he contacted me.
Oh, right, yeah.
Late in the spring about doing a book review. He was going to pay me $2,000 to do a book review. And being the person I am in my history, when I saw the name, I just assumed he was at least my age, was a Jewish neocon who was out someplace in Brooklyn with like a past that touched partisan review and and I mean that shit. And then I found out that he's the other kind of Julius Krein. He's from South Dakota. He's 18 years old.
Right.
And is a Nazi, basically. He went to Harvard and was a Trumper until he wasn't. And this magazine is extremely well funded by Mellon or Scape or somebody like that. And they've been fishing, right? Because they've contacted several of my friends. And they got Angela Nagel, but she'd got already anyway. Yeah. But they were trying to publish people with reputations for being iconoclasts on the left. And it's clearly like, it's clearly a political operation that's directed towards trying to stir up shit and discord right among leftists.
So this is Adolph Reed, the man who is always diverting discussions about race, acknowledging that there's a well-oiled white supremacist political machine out there. And at the same time, he is acknowledging that they're reaching out to a lot of his friends and himself. This is causing a lot of controversy on that side, or in these little groups, because a lot of these leftists are white supremacists. They have no problem with linking up with white supremacists on the other side, as long as they could try to accomplish their goals. A lot of these academics and a lot of these spokespeople for this group, they're out here grifting. They have no problem taking money from Nazis. And because this is getting exposed by Adolph Reed, he kind of got himself in some shit.
Brianna Joy Gray, she has run into an issue, regardless of what we have pointed out about her politics. Suddenly she's in hot water because she said something out of pocket. It's considered out of pocket. Well, you guys will decide how you feel about it to a Jewish Antifa person. So let's see how it goes. And we're going to start off with her defense of what she said. Defense of what she said on the Hill. So we'll start from there. Sam, take it from there.
And I want to take this moment to say I find it hilarious that the Hill hired Kim Iverson, who is a whole anti-Black racist. Like, I know that she like feigned the sickness to say that she was for, like pretend that she was okay with reparations after talking to Marianne. But I remember running across this chick's show a couple years ago. She is an anti-Black racist, and she plays the I'm half Asian card. Yeah, fuck her. So we'll have to dig those old videos up someday and go for her and go through her, because she a whole problem too.
Yeah, I mean that's how you get hired. You're willing to shit on Black people. Great, you never go hungry. There's always somebody willing to pay you for that.
Mhm. All right, let's rock. We're not gonna play all of this. It's just gonna be a little bit. Okay, Jose, come on. I need this play button.
Author and leftist Twitter personality Talia Lavin joined Brianna Joy Gray's Bad Faith podcast this week in a conversation that went awry when the topic turned to de-radicalization and coalition building with the far right. Here's some video of that.
Listen, like, I don't think that I'm going to be able to convince you. I think if you want to, like, hold hands with a, Nazi and kiss them gently on the cheek, that's fine. I just don't think that's going to work out well for you.
Do you think that what I'm arguing for is that I Brianna Joy Gray, who was sitting before you as a Black woman, wants to hold hands with Nazis and kiss them in the street? I'm not trying to debate you at all here. I'm trying to explore what I think are some tensions that I too am wrestling with. And I would hope that since we're both members of this group, of these groups that certainly see no benefit in appeasing Nazis, that we can have a conversation that doesn't presume that where we're coming from is because of some natural sympathy with these groups, as opposed to genuinely trying to strategize about how to fix this problem that we very much agree on, which is that America is being increasingly radicalized in these extremist ways.
I feel like I've stated my position repeatedly, and then I don't quite know how to react to respond other than like, no, I really believe what I believe. Everything we can do to mitigate those feelings in such large masses of the population, like, that's great. I think there are many constructive things you can do to fight Nazism that don't involve brass knuckling up and like just flattening the nose of a Proud Boy. But like, I think you have to be willing to brass knuckle up and flatten the nose of a Proud Boy too.
Well, after the podcast was posted, Talia took to Twitter and posted private DMs between her and Brianna, captioning it, quote, "an absolute mess." Glenn Greenwald joined the fray, tweeting out, "Amazing. Lavin feels comfortable accusing Gray of wanting to kiss Nazis, literally, due to Brie's crime of believing in the best left-wing tradition that root causes should be understood instead of just calling people bad names." Well, we've invited Lavin to join Rising at a future time to discuss, but right now we have the host of Bad Faith podcast and former national spokesperson for the Bernie Sanders campaign, Brianna Joy Gray, here to give her side of the story. Brianna, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So how do you feel about being called a Nazi and all these other things? I mean, what is your take on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately very unfortunate. I'm obviously very humbled and grateful that so many interesting guests are willing to come on Bad Faith podcast and engage in good faith conversation with me there. I was really interested in talking to Talia because few people have had as much close proximity with people that are so radicalized and far right and extremist as she has. Her book and her project has been to infiltrate right-wing spaces online, including by making a dating profile on white.net and interacting with men on there for a year and a half. So my first question to her, it actually wasn't about deprogramming at all. I simply asked her as a leftist what that experience did to inform her confidence or pessimism about building broad coalitions, not with Nazis, of course, but how did it broadly inform her thoughts and feelings about how to coalition build among a broad multiracial coalition? And she immediately pivoted the conversation to deprogramming. The way to get out of this mess and the way to resolve the political balkanization and the rise of right-wing extremism is going to require a deprogramming that is not going to, it's going to require a broader deprogramming that accesses the core of what's driving people into these communities at higher and higher rates, right? And that it's not necessarily going to be about saying you're racist and you're bad, even if that's 100% true, but that it's going to be about figuring out what compels an individual to find more solace in white supremacy than another kind of community. And so I wonder what your thoughts are on that as a leftist. Is there an incompatibility with wanting to have a broad multiracial coalition and a kind of insistence? I mean, you're dealing with the a really narrow extreme part of the country. So I don't want to say that every conservative or every Trump voter is implicated in this conversation. But, do you ever feel like there's a tension between kind of the need to coalition build and a perception of a certain segment of society as kind of untouchable?
I don't feel that tension.
Presumably because she's gotten a lot of questions about that before, and it became very defensive almost immediately. And I was curious about that, primarily because so often these conversations go off the rails because one party or the other accuses each other of anti-Semitism, of being a Nazi sympathizer, exactly the way it happened here. And I hoped that because I'm a Black American who obviously benefits not at all from the rise of Nazis, and that I argued is equally yoked insofar as my community and hers have a lot to lose from the rise of radical extremism, but we might be able to have a reasonable conversation that didn't default into this kind of identity essentialism. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I think she, in her behavior, she ended up making the worst possible case you could for the argument she was making. And we're not talking behind her back. She's welcome, and I hope she does come here and discuss this with us. But she is essentially in the camp saying that it is fine to deny certain rights, free speech protections to the far right, to the extreme right, people engaged in far right activity. I always say, well, if you're going to have that standard, backtrack from the old ACLU standard that the Nazis should be able to march through Skokie, then you have to have a very clear definition of who actually is a Nazi and which rights we're taking away. At the very, I wouldn't support this, but this would be a way you'd have to go about doing it. And instead, she's expanding the definition of who is a Nazi to include you, and saying the rights that should be taken away include they should be met with explicit violence. So I feel like she is undermining any plausible case you could make for she's not strongmanning the Antifa position, is she?
Yeah, the Skokie example is important because the argument that ACLU is making there is not that Nazis are good and should be defended, or that there is any value necessarily to their speech, but part of the principle is that it is so difficult to discern whose speech should and should not be abridged, right? Whose rights should and shouldn't be taken away, and who's going to be the arbiter of that. And it's particularly concerning that Talia showed a lack of humility in that regard because, and I don't bring this up because I have any interest in digging in on this point or highlighting a mistake. A lot of people make mistakes, but she is kind of known for having been let go from the New Yorker as a fact checker because she misidentified an ICE officer as having a white supremacist tattoo that in fact was not a white supremacist tattoo. Ending up targeting that person for what ultimately ended up being unjustified hate and attack, right? So if you have already made a mistake like that in your personal life as a fact checker at a prestigious institution, one might think you would have a little humility before going around saying that folks need to be deplatformed, et cetera. And in fact, in the context of our conversation, she admitted that deplatforming would ultimately disproportionately affect the left. She completely conceded that point. It will hurt the left more than the right. And yet she decided that that was okay and a fine consequence, I guess, if it met the ultimate ends. And as someone who is only able to support herself, frankly, after having been marginalized by the mainstream news media for having progressive values, by having an independent platform and a site like Patreon, I think it's really concerning to see her willingness to take such draconian action without even giving some thought into what the kind of metrics would be for that kind of attack on free speech.
Hello and welcome to another TLDR EU video. Hate speech is sadly rife on the internet, from comments that skate the line to unquestionably offensive remarks. One country that's attempted to do something material about it has been Germany. Since the 1st of October 2017, the Network Enforcement Act, known as NetzDG, has beefed up protections and forced platforms to take content down quickly. The issue with this is that some believe that NetzDG doesn't go far enough, and others think it goes too far altogether. So in this video, we'll take a dive into Germany's hate speech law, and what the future could hold for the internet in Germany and around Europe. If you want us to be able to report on whatever we want without censorship or fear of demonetization, then be sure to back us on Patreon. Doing so not only gets you great perks such as behind the scenes posts, early access to videos and live events, but it also helps support our channel and our content. To find out more and support TLDR, click the link in the description. First things first then, what actually is the Network Enforcement Act? Well, in the words of the government department responsible for it, NETS-DG aims to fight hate crime, criminally punishable fake news, and other unlawful content on social networks more effectively. This includes insult, malicious gossip, defamation, public incitement to crime, incitement to hatred, disseminating portrayals of violence, and threatening commission of a felony. In practice, a number of new requirements were established. Platforms were required to offer an easily recognizable, quickly accessible, and permanently available procedure for reporting content, to take down content as quickly as possible. Manifestly unlawful content, the content that's obviously harmful or illegal, must, under German law, be taken down within 24 hours. All other criminal content must be blocked within 7 days. Twice a year, platforms are also obligated to publish publicly available reports on their compliance. But the main deterrent of these systems are the fines. Failure to deal with complaints within the 24-hour or 7-day time frame, or a failure to set up a system at all, can result in fines of up to 5 million euros against the person responsible for the complaints management system, and up to 50 million euros against the company itself. And Germany is prepared to use this power. Back in August of 2019, the German Federal Office of Justice fined Facebook Ireland Limited, Facebook's EU base, 2 million euros for violating reporting obligations. However, the wider issue is invariably whether NETS-DG has struck the right balance between free speech and privacy on one hand, and law enforcement and national security on the other. As recently as June this year, other countries' attempts at hate speech regulation have come under judicial and constitutional scrutiny. In May, and in the first piece of legislation not linked to the pandemic since lockdowns began, France finally adopted a law on hate speech, largely echoing that of Germany. Platforms such as Google, Twitter, and Facebook would now have 24 hours to remove content flagged as hateful, and just 1 hour to remove content flagged as terrorist propaganda. The fines were, however, significantly reduced from the German system, maxing out at just 1.25 million euros. The criticism of this new scheme was rife, and nothing new either. All the way back in November, the European Commission wrote to the French government to voice their concerns, asking that the government wait for a common EU standard to be enacted, and claiming that the new French law may not actually comply with EU laws. That's because the EU is currently negotiating and drafting up the aforementioned common EU standard, known as the Digital Services Act. This act is designed to set a common benchmark and Europe-wide policy for moderating and dealing with illegal and hateful content, and is expected early next year. We will, of course, cover that in the new year if any interesting developments arise out of it. Anyway, within a matter of months, the law was hauled before France's Constitutional Council, after some raised concerns over how platforms were actually meant to determine what was unlawful. Critics argued that the law, as it was, encouraged platform providers to remove flagged content, whether or not it actually infringed on any laws, in effect, over censorship. Citing Article 34 of the French Constitution, the court balanced the right of the government to restrict freedom of expression and communication that violates public order and rights of third parties against the general freedom of expression and communication, concluding that freedom of expression is all the more valuable because its exercise is a condition of democracy. Therefore, Parliament has brought to freedom of expression and communication an infringement that is not appropriate, necessary, or proportionate to the purpose pursued, and therefore the law was deemed unconstitutional. In spite of all these difficulties in France, Germany is clearly not backing down. Instead, it's actually going even further. A matter of days after the court in France concluded that the French version was unconstitutional, Germany passed amendments and reforms that would require platform providers to report certain types of criminal content to the Federal Crime Police Office, adding to the already fervent criticisms of the law. Now the concern is that social media giants are being co-opted to help the state build massive databases on citizens without robust legal justification. For civil liberty and privacy campaigners, the move is yet another step in the wrong direction, with some going as far as to state that the move violates rule of law guarantees in the German constitution, and that forcing platforms to reveal their users' true identities to the authorities without a court mandate or proper individual judicial review would set a very, very dangerous precedent. In 2018, NetzDG, as it was back then, without any of these new proposals, was already highly criticised. Human Rights Watch, an international non-governmental organisation advocating for, you guessed it, human rights, called out the law directly. The Germany director of the Human Rights Watch stressed that governments and the public have valid concerns about the proliferation of illegal or abusive content online, but the new German law is fundamentally flawed. It's vague, overbroad, and turns private companies into overzealous censors to avoid steep fines, leaving users with no judicial oversight or right to appeal. In their eyes, this opens the path for far more aggressive legislation by other countries, using the already flawed German model as a basis. This new reform only adding to the laws may seem to have come out of nowhere, but actually it's anything but. The impetus of the reform being the 2019 murder of local German politician Walter Lübcke by a neo-Nazi. A murder preceded by a number of targeted threats and hate speech, as Lübcke had become the face of Germany's refugee policy, a highly controversial policy, which, if you want, we can cover in another video. Just let us know in the comments below. Anyway, the reforms to force police notifications aren't even the end. Wider reform is ongoing, with objections ranging from strengthening users' rights and making reporting channels more friendly, to simplifying the appeals process and the significance of transparency reports. A spokesperson on legal affairs for the Social Democrats, the junior coalition party in Germany, stressed the importance of the move. We have to do more to prevent hate and slander from spreading online. No one's legitimately questioning the need for the protections and the need to take down hateful content, the issue being achieving some semblance of balance. As we said near the top of the video, it's about achieving the right balance between free speech and privacy on one hand, and law enforcement and national security on the other. Something highlighted by a German MP for the opposition Green Party when they said, "What we're debating here in Berlin has great relevance for all democracies, whether they're in Europe or elsewhere in the world. We're walking a tightrope, having to balance the fight against disinformation, incitement and slander on one side with the right to free speech on the other, which is of paramount importance in democracies. To come up with a law that's both balanced and effective is far from a trivial task." Germany already has some of the strictest laws on hate speech in the world. Inciting hatred against national, religious, ethnic or racial groups has already been outlawed for years and years. So is the use of racial slurs and displaying Nazi symbols. But for many German policymakers, Lübcke's murder highlighted that NetzDG doesn't go far enough, that more work needed to be done to protect people on and offline. But what do you think? Is NetzDG a template for other countries to use in order to regulate online content? Or does it impinge on key freedoms? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name listed at the end of the videos, then be sure to back us on Patreon. The link to that's in the description.
Yeah.
So we might take
what
money
I found
from Nazis.
most disturbing or interesting about.
Now I'm done. So we might actually take money from Nazis, and that would be a bad thing. Taking money away from Nazis and white supremacists. Go ahead.
But for me, I mean, a lot of that there was taking jabs at her personally, which was unnecessary, I think. But I don't, is what it is. But I think, we have drawn lines about what's free speech. Like they always say, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, right? When you start getting to the point where you're inciting violence, that's where you draw the line. When you start marginalizing other groups, that's where you draw the line, right? People act like free speech is absolute. It is not absolute. It has never been absolute, especially for us as Black people. It is still not absolute, right? And to act as if that's the case is, well, I understand why they're doing it, but to act as if that's the case is wild to me. Y'all go ahead.
Well, I want to jump in because the thing that was irking me the most is how they're conflating a few different issues. As far as like individuals getting into a fight with Nazis, that's completely different than our government taking their rights away. Deplatforming them from Patreon is completely different than our government taking their rights away.
That's true. It's a private organization. Yeah, I've been kicked off of a few platforms. I've been kicked off one platform several times. But we get that it's a private organization. They can do what they want to do. Yeah, it's a privately owned company. They can do what they want to do. Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, they're not being honest in their framing of this whole issue, and I don't know. Like the ACLU has been around for a long time, and they have not figured out a way to resolve this issue of Nazis. So maybe we do need a different fucking approach to all of this. I'm not saying that we need to have the government come in and put on the brass knuckles. You know what I'm saying? But I think that this whole idea that we need to like play nice and allow these people to have equal space in mainstream society, I'm not with that. I'm sorry.
Not either. That's how we get murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this, look, it's a completely different thing than talking about your average Republican that doesn't give a fuck about Black people versus someone who is online and the way they entertain themselves is, daydreaming of genocide with a bunch of other, white supremacists.
You were a skinhead for how many years?
I was a neo-Nazi skinhead from 1987 until 1995, roughly from the time I was 14 years old until I was 21.
He says he and alleged Charleston shooter Dylan Roof might once have been kindred spirits.
Would you have applauded Dylan Roof?
I would have. I would have thought that this guy had the courage to speak for the rest of us and to do something.
We also have to understand that the violence that these people are doing, it's not just the talk. The talk is connected to violence, and we have to understand that. We have to be very clear about that. All right, go ahead.
So I want to start with a question. Why is this conversation happening? Why did the Rising pick this up? Since when does the Rising care to protect Black people from accusations of being Nazis or anti-Semitic?
It's because they're friends with Brie.
I don't remember Nick Cannon being given this like invitation to defend himself.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
I've yet to see the Louis Farrakhan episode where he gets to come on and defend himself against accusations of Nazism and free speech rights and all that.
Because Brie is a misinformation asset. That's why they're protecting her. But continue.
Yeah, Brie is the black face of white feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Like they put her out there to go ahead. Please go ahead.
This whole thing has been them shifting the Overton window, or at least attempting to, for them to try to make space on the left for white supremacists.
Preach.
There is no space on the left for Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
We are literally the opposite of that. The whole reason there is a left is so there won't be Nazis. That means there can't be Nazis on the left.
Mm-hmm. Especially an organization like Antifa.
So this is the thing. Sorry, I want to interject real quick, right? So hashtag ADOS got all this slack, right? Because I just want to ask this question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So hashtag ADOS got all this slack, right? We were called xenophobic. We were said that we hated immigrants, all this other stuff, and that people shouldn't build alliances with us, right? For reparations because we hate other groups. And we don't. These motherfuckers literally do. And it's in like they literature. And it's what they about. But you want to ally with them instead of allying with us, who are actually on the same side as you. Go ahead, Josiah.
No, we ain't. I am not on the same side as any Nazi collaborator.
No, I mean on the left. I'm talking about the left is supposed to be our home.
I got you.
So,
it's just like,
so you get what I'm saying? Instead of them coming to you, me, your grandmama, They rather go to some racists and not
the left. I don't believe that the left is her home. I don't believe she has a home politically. I think that her home is whoever is paying them checks. I think her home was with Bernie when Bernie had a job for her. Speaking of which, and speaking of people standing up for Black people on accusations of Nazism, where is Bernie Sanders on all of this? Because I remember where Brianna was when Bernie was being accused of racism. Scratch a lie, find a thief. That's all I'm saying.
You got anything, MG?
Well, Edie didn't go yet.
Do I really want to come up after the Bernie burn? Because I can't defend that shit. I cannot defend that.
Well, just skip over it
I'm
like all other Bernie supporters do. Just what? Who said that? And keep going.
I'm not going to try. I don't know what to say about that, except for, he's up there working on a infrastructure bill, hopefully, or some kind of fucking bill. And so I wish he would speak up more. I really do. Well, I've seen Talia Lavin on Twitter, and she can be bombastic, I think might be the word, harsh and stuff. But I didn't hear her call Brianna a Nazi. I think she said, if you want to cozy up to Nazis, basically. And I'm with y'all. I have no interest in working with folks who their main foundation is racism. And these folks stem from the Southern strategy. They're part of the Republican strategy that created all these far right folks carrying guns around and threatening people, even on down to school boards. Maybe not. I don't think they've been with guns yet to the school boards, but they've been with zip ties to a principal and threatening a principal last couple of weeks. So I agree with Killmonger that that was done for Brianna to boost her show, to boost her ratings, picking on Talia, I think I haven't been on Twitter in a long time, but she built up a following while I was watching her, and she's got she seems to have quite a few folks who support her. So I got lost in that train of thought. So I don't know. I'm not sure. It shows the fissures between the left, right? And it's sad. I wish that I wish that Talia had. They didn't say they invited Talia on. They said they hope she comes on, but they did not say that she was invited. She had been invited to that segment. So I thought the whole thing.
They say it later, though. Sorry, we didn't play the whole segment. They do say, if she wants to come on to defend herself, she can.
I think she should have gone on to defend herself.
Well, maybe she'll get around to. Maybe she'll get around to, or maybe she just didn't feel like having to sit through and go through that shit again with people that she knows are not going to be friendly.
Right. But the basis of it is we shouldn't be allowing the Lincoln Project is in the Democratic Party now. They should go back to the Republican Party and fix the party that they helped fuck up. Right. So we have all kinds of problems just trying to get the left to do the right thing in the Democratic Party. And so Brianna shows that how she has more power than Talia, so she can go on the Hill, the Rising, and make her case. But Talia's not going to have access to that. Certainly not a segment like that with them. Maybe they will, but I doubt it. So
it'll be.
I don't know. It brings up a lot of feelings for me, and I don't exactly agree with the way that Talia did it. Maybe. But then again, I'd probably do the same thing because I have no interest in those folks either. We should be bringing new people into the party and exciting other people that feel downtrodden rather than going up to the people with the guns and saying, yeah, we want to be with y'all. Not the guns, but the racism and the guns. The guns, as a Southerner, for me, the guns and the racism are intertwined. So maybe it's not that way on the West Coast with everybody or in the middle of the country, but in the South, You know, that's how it is. Okay, that's it for me.
Yeah, I think one of the things well, two things real quick. You know, as everybody kind of alluded to here, is this is a powerful faction of the United States, right? The entire Republican Party bows to these people, right? They get protected by the police. They get, you know, people, you know, look away when they start stacking up arms and all this other stuff, all the training they do, recruiting out of the military, within and without the military and law enforcement, all this entire web of right-wing violence just waiting to explode.
Yes,
has been created, and it's been fed, and it continues to be fed, right? And for us on the left to reach out, well, not us, but people on the left to reach out to that faction and say, hey, come into our tent. And they think that's a growth strategy. That's a growth strategy for the right, but that's not a growth strategy for the left, because people are going to go flying out the other side of the tent as soon as they come in, right? They're going to bring money in the tent with them, which I think is a concern of most of these people talking that shit. All right, but that's not always the case. This is more of a to my mind, this is more of a right-wing operation to try to break down the left because they were getting some traction, right? And it's also a shot at us because reparations is getting traction on the left, right? So if the reparations are getting traction, they will do absolutely anything to get away from that, right? And, you know, I recognize that people have been talking about dealing with the right for a while. But it's been accelerated by the fact that reparations is growing, and people can deny that's the case, but that's what's going on. That's what's going on, because they know that once the case is made, leftists of any moral character will move to this argument, and that's their problem. All right, that's all I got.
I think that my issue is, like, we're not just talking about people who are on the right. We're talking about like the extreme right. And I would love to see any like real evidence that shows that these efforts have actually there's been conversion of like great numbers of white supremacists. Like, I just don't think that like the benefits of this is worth the effort. Like, I haven't seen any proof that any of that has actually been shown to be true. Because I don't see, you know, the left gaining a whole bunch of numbers and being able to shift things politically. They've been losing. So what is the point of this from their point of view? Like, I don't see anyone really showing how this strategy has any value.
I can tell you how it doesn't work, because I read an article recently. I really want Joe Manchin out of office. And so I look at West Virginia and Joe Manchin and how people talk about West Virginia voters and say, oh, they're all, you know, Republicans, deep red Republicans, and they want this and they want that. I don't think they know that, because the senator before Joe Manchin was called the king of pork, and he was beloved for decades. And so when Robert Byrd, who was the senator before Joe Manchin, when he died and Manchin took his spot in 2010, that's when the Dem party started losing more voters. In February 2021 is the first year ever that Democratic voters have been outnumbered by Republican voters. Republican voters are now, for the first time in West Virginia, 2021, outnumbering the Democratic voters. And why? I think it's because they've got Dem leadership like Joe Manchin. Because why go with the guy who's a big fat liar, right? Who runs as a Democrat but votes as a Republican? Why not just join the Republican Party and be a Republican? So I firmly believe that, and plus, if you debate politics with white Southerners who voted for Democrats before the Southern strategy, one of the things they say is, oh, they're all the same. Well, Joe Manchin type Democrats prove that, because he's a liar. He's up there saying he's one thing, but he's really voting as another. So they are all the same. So why not just go with the party who's really being truthful?
And I hate to say this, Edie, because my next question is, what party's being truthful?
I know that I'm not saying that the Democratic Party is any better.
I'm not saying
It's
trying
hard.
to say that either.
It's so
Edie.
hard.
I understand everything you said, and it made perfect sense. I'm just being a jokester.
I'm just saying we have no place else to go. Like, we don't have another party to go to. So we either build up this one or figure out a way to build another one. And they're going to roadblock us every time. So for me, in my head, I always work from the supposition that we fix the Democratic Party. That's just how I think in my head.
Well, and Edie, I want to go a little bit further on what you said. And then if anybody else wants to go, and then we can start up the Free Breeze video. But when you keep talking about the third party, now I'm not against a third party before people start trying to like, Sam's against starting a third party. But in the history of this country, third parties have always tended to be absorbed by one of the major two parties. So I'm not saying that it can't be done. I'm just saying that it hasn't happened in our history I'm like taking full control and power.
I'm saying it's really fucking difficult, and they'll put roadblocks up every way. So it's probably the easier path is to fix what we got. You know?
I'm with you, Edie. I agree. I'm just glad you said it, because they'll be like, oh my God, she's against third party. She's working.
Well, now they're just gonna hate me. Thank you.
Well, but you don't be you're not online like that, so you're all right. And you're not gonna sit around and read the comments. So
this is true.
One of the things about third party is, with the lack of money and the roadblocks, third party is going to be useless unless there's only, to my mind, only one way a third party can move anything is if they become a threat, right? And then that'll force the Democrats to the table, right? If they're not going to become a threat, they'll just, they'll get everybody in line at CNN and MSNBC and just push them out of the way. Mm-hmm. Right. But if they can build something, for instance, that pulls the black vote away from the Democrats, then you got a problem. Then the Democrats gotta either come to the table or send the troops. That's their only option.
Yeah, one or the other.
Mm-hmm. That's their only option. So, but a third party that's just doing like the white people's party's doing, then the Democrats aren't even looking at the The Democrats don't care a shit about the People's Party, the white people's party.
And just think about what the Democrats did to the Green Party with getting them kicked off of ballots in different states and all the shady shit they did to them. Like, not only are you fighting the Republicans, you're fighting the Democrats too with the third party. And again, nobody's saying that you shouldn't do it or that you shouldn't try, but you have to understand how large of a feat that is. And y'all haven't organized enough people. At the end of the day, everybody's talking about all the things we need to do. We need to organize more people so we can talk about doing the shit you're talking about. But with a little handful of people, go ahead, Edie.
Sorry. I think that
no, you're good.
That people don't understand how hard the fight is going on. And I know I've said this on the show before, how hard it's going on within the Democratic Party for leftists to really break through. Like, I know we get upset with AOC and the squad because we don't feel like they're doing enough. Fucking A. If you knew how hard it was just to do what they are doing, like it's a battle just to break through because of the strength of the machine that's going on right now. I could carry on today.
AOC is millennial Obama.
Yes, she is.
Nobody's living up to my expectations in the Democratic Party. Right? Lots of people feel that way. The problem is we can't get any power because the people who hold the power are really powerful and they got all the money.
Now, so this is what I was going to say. So to steal a line from Yvette Carnell, you have to have wind at your back to get shit done. The reason the progressives can't get anything done is because they don't have enough people. I keep saying this over and over again. A couple thousand people tweeting on Twitter is not people. How many people can you mobilize in the street in a day, in a week? So AOC's fucking up and you live in her district and you want her to do what she said she was gonna do, can you organize 500 people in that district to go and knock on everybody's doors and tell them how AOC's not representing them and how they need to vote for a different candidate? If you can't mobilize real power, then it's all talk. And I'm talking about myself too. I can't call 100 people and get them to mobilize. I got to build that. But nobody's trying to build the people group. They're trying to talk on YouTube or talk on Twitter and build national things with people who don't live near them instead of building stuff at home and talking to people nationally to see what's working and what's not working and sharing information versus trying to do all these things. That's what I'm seeing on my end. Do we have anything else, guys, before we actually get into the Brianna Joy video? Because we want to get in that video too.
Let's do it.
Okay. But yeah, that's what it is. At the end of the day, there's not enough wind behind their back. You can elect all the progressives that you want, but if you can't force the other people around them to do anything, there's not much you can do. Like, yeah, the squad has, if they wanted to, they could wield power because of their numbers. But at the end of the day, when Pelosi comes for them, you guys can't mobilize against Pelosi to actually quash that. So again, I'm not defending AOC because anybody who's listened to our show long enough knows how I feel about her. But any politician we put in office, we have to have the numbers that when they don't do what we want, we can punish them legally, as in vote them out and get somebody else in. But if you can't really pull people's coats and cards when they do stuff, like, you have no power. Like, our power is with each other. We have to come together, as many like-minded people as possible. And I don't have a like mind with Nazis or white supremacists. Now, people who have dropped the N-bomb once or twice in their life and know that they need to do better now is a different conversation than somebody who literally was cheering on Dylan Roof, killing Black people. You know what I mean? So let's not pretend like they're not talking. Never mind, let me just play this because I get so frustrated with that. I'm so tired of them trying to pretend like, oh, we just want to try to work with everybody. What's wrong with you guys that you don't want to work with everybody? It's like, no, that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about dealing with extremists. You're not talking about, you're not talking about recruiting the, random Republican who, doesn't even think about Black people. You're talking about people who are Nazis.
That's what I'm saying. What we're dealing with in the Dem Party, people who are Democrats. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I haven't pulled out. I can't do it yet.
That's good.
But what are we dealing with? Like I mentioned earlier, the Lincoln Project. Okay, these people are popular in the party. I find them disgusting because they help build what's on the Republican Party side today. But here we are.
Yeah, all those George Bush cast-offs. Yeah, they're ridiculous.
Yes, there we are. And they have more pull in the Democratic Party leadership than the squad does. I guarantee you. That's how I feel around me. Mm-hmm. So look, I want AOC to do better. I want the squad to do better. But I've also been surrounded by establishment Dems who wouldn't even let me write a newsletter. I'm sure for a Dem club, like, they will stop you any way possible because they don't want you to have a win. And so you're right. We have to have more people. We need, And I also thought about the Tea Party, that was a small faction in the beginning, and they won not by showing up always to protest, but making the phone calls to their representatives. And they were on the phones every day. And I feel like the phone calls and the letters make much more. If you send those letters, you make phone calls, and you get all your friends to do the same thing, that's just as powerful as showing up one day for a protest, because you can call every day. You can email every day, and it only takes 5 minutes.
Yeah, but remember, the Tea Party also had money. They had financial backers. That's another issue.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot to other things.
There's got to be infrastructure built.
Well, that's how you get the organization, right? So if you can afford to run ads and pay people to write articles, you do that. When you're poor, you get people to use their feet power and knock on people's doors.
Yeah.
Like Mark was talking about that last night. Let's go ahead and get this cracking a little bit. I might put in a little snippet from Mark as a little preview because he was really getting into that. So, all right, here we go. This is the infamous video.
The way to get out of this mess and the way to resolve the political balkanization and the rise of right-wing extremism is going to require a deprogramming that is not going to, it's going to require a broader deprogramming that accesses the core of what's driving people into these communities at higher and higher rates, right? And that it's not necessarily going to be about saying you're racist and you're bad, even if that's 100% true, but that it's going to be about figuring out what compels an individual to find more solace in white supremacy than another kind of community. And so I wonder,
I'm sorry, I know she ain't even got a minute in, but I just want to reiterate my question because she did say, well, even if they are racist, it doesn't matter. So she is talking about the extremes. She's not talking about, because I get tired of this thing where people like Brianna tries to be like, oh, you know, every time you talk to a white person, you're calling them a racist. When I'm talking to white people about reparations, Black American issues, freedmen issues, my first go-to is not to call them a racist. So when I see her here now, she's like, well, but how do we just get them to see that the more important coalition, why don't you go and talk to the 100 million people who do not vote? Why do we have to go and get the extremists? Why do we need not? Sorry, y'all got anything before I keep playing? But even in the first 48 seconds, it's just like you see herself trying to explain to herself. It does not make sense to align with extremists. Regular Republicans are not extremists. Nazis and white supremacists, Klan members are extremists, especially when you start getting to the radicals. Please go ahead, Mud.
No, I just wanted to point out that she is full of shit because she said on the Hill thing, when she started, she didn't even go into this idea of trying to build coalitions with white supremacists, Nazis. She said she was just talking about building general coalitions. And she said that this, the other woman, what is her name, Talia? Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Yeah, she said that Talia was the one that took the interview into that direction. Clearly, she is starting off with, well, how do we kiss on these Nazis to get them to love us? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and this is. Go ahead.
I think it's laughable. I think it's laughable that she thinks it's possible to deprogram these people. Like, I haven't talked to my parents in 3 years. Some of this is the reason. Like, I don't want my dad to rub off on my child. I don't want him saying question the things around my child. Do you think I've worked on this? I'm 48 years old. Do you think I've worked on him for the last 30 years? Yes. You do not deprogram these people. It is impossible. The only way that they will move towards what you want is if it affects them personally. And we're seeing with COVID, that doesn't even matter. Like, so.
Yeah, I think because it's, again, two things. It's always two things. That when you deal with people like this, when you deal with people, these people are, they don't call them hardcore for nothing. They're the core of this right movement. They're the hardcore, the fist of this right-wing movement. And you think you're going to come in talking about de-radicalization, they'll laugh at you. They're gonna laugh at you.
Yes.
You don't go into anybody's space. You don't go into anybody's space thinking that and tell them I'm going to come in and change your beliefs. Nobody's going for that. Not on the religious level, not on this ideological level, none of this. Right?
Not taking Jesus from grandma?
Exactly. Imagine going into a Christian church and saying, you know, I'm gonna tell you Jesus wasn't real. You'll get kicked out of there. There's no logic to this. But this
you can't even tell Black people Jesus wasn't white.
Exactly. So if she thinks she's just gonna throw Medicare for all at somebody and they're just gonna go belly up, oh, you right. No, that's not how this works. That's not how ideology works. That's not how culture works. That's not how logic works. And that further, goes to the second part, that further informs what this decision is for. They want to move in this direction to make commitments to this de-radicalization because they know that what will harm that de-radicalization is reparations, right? So in that grain, if you know that de-radicalization is not going to work, especially in this frame because you don't have anything to offer them, right? What the smart thing to do and what the logical thing to do in any other situation would be to finance and empower their enemy, right? Which is us, right? We're the answer, like Irony said, they're fire, we're the water, right? If you're going, we as Black people, the descendants of slaves, because we're their main target in this country, right? So we as their main target, the answer is to empower and protect us. That's not, but this de-radicalization piece, going straight to the hardcore, are you high? Really? That's a Daryl, what is his name, getting Klan suits. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Got a whole 10 people this week.
The
Get the
Daryl
fuck
Davis.
out of here. All right, that's all I got for that.
I wanted to also add it struck me.
Edie, 1 second. Can you let Josiah go? Because
I beg your pardon. Sorry.
No worries. I just want to make sure everybody's getting their first thoughts off because everybody be holding their thoughts. So go ahead, Josiah.
So this is what she's doing is trying to mainstream like racist on the left. You go with the most extreme possible example and you say, this is what we're actually trying to do. Now, nobody's ever going to let the Nazis in on the left, but anybody who's less than a Nazi suddenly seems a lot more acceptable. So maybe they don't hate Jewish people, but they kind of don't like Black people. That's a compromise.
Wow.
Maybe they don't hate anybody. Maybe they're just against reparations. That's a compromise. That's the whole purpose of this whole thing. Because I keep asking myself, why is this conversation happening? And again, free speech and everything, everybody's allowed to talk about what they want to talk about. But her stated goals were to, proselytize about coalition building, right? So why do you go to the Antifa person who wrote a book about dealing with Nazis? Why is this the person you want to talk to about coalition building, unless you're trying to coalition build Nazis?
Yeah. Why not get the guy who gets deprogrammed who was a Nazi who got deprogrammed? Why not talk to him about it?
Why not talk to literally anybody else? This is the part I don't understand. If you want a coalition build, right? Why go to the person who deals with Nazis? Why not coalition build with, me?
Yeah.
Perfectly said.
Go ahead, Edie. I know you wanted to get yours in.
I'm sorry. I just had to say, like, if Brianna's watching, like, I watch young people on Facebook in the South who are like Zoomers or whatever, younger, and they're fighting their families on Facebook, and their uncle, their aunt, their, cousin will slam them in a heartbeat. Okay. There is no reprogramming. There's no taking people out of this. It's impossible. And their own family members are working on this in some families, not every family.
Just wanted to ask one last question. What are we building this coalition to do?
Medicare for all.
Because like, if I'm teaming up with the Nazis, okay, but who are we going against? We are the enemies at that point.
Yeah. So you got a good point. So wait. So we're teaming up with Nazis for $15 an hour in Medicare for all.
I'm saying they got
damn
billions if we go and team up. Like,
that's a cheap ass alliance to ally with Nazis.
And we also have for it. There's a couple of other things at play here too, right? With the end of Bernie's viability, if there ever really was any, at the end of Bernie's viability to run for president, this whole movement is aimless, right? Bernie bungled any sort of transition plan to a new leadership, right? It should have been honestly it should have been Nina, but what's her name? AOC became the new shiny thing in the movement, right? So, and then we turned out that she was full of shit. She was just another climber, right? So there's a lot of this, and that generates a lot of nihilism, right? Okay, what can I get out of this now? This shit is dead. What can I get out of this now? All right, and so here comes Mr. Moneybags. I think it's Mellon who's doing bringing all this money into trying to get money into the left to get them to do crazy shit, like write articles about slamming Darity's book, From Here to Equality. We had to do that on the Nation, in the Nation magazine, and then we also had, of course, the main culprit and ire for me was Matt Taibbi and others slamming white fragility. This is that right wing money coming into the movement to keep it from radicalizing,
addressing our issues.
Yeah, radicalizing around Black issues, because that's the logical move, right? The logical move for the left right now, since it's aimless, is to go to the people that need to be served the most. That's the logical move, right? Especially if they are especially if that group is the main group that upholds their main opponent, which is the Democratic Party. The logical move is to gravitate around Black issues, but the right can't let that happen because that can work, right? So this whole CRT thing, white fragility bullshit, going after Darity's book, all this shit is connected, and it's all connected to right-wing money. These people going to hang out with Nazis, get the fuck out of here. This is all money. So, Brianna's making what, $30,000 a month on Patreon? Jimmy, I don't know, shit, Jimmy's probably at least $40,000-$50,000 a month on Patreon. All these people are getting paid, and all these people in Jimmy's orbit that get that to get that money, right? And this is also some social engineering shit too, right? Tim brought it up before, right? So whenever what's that boy's name? Whenever Jimmy went after the squad, the views go through the roof, right? That's that right-wing money, right? When every time you get rewarded, even subliminally, you get rewarded for doing something that helps them, you get that little boost, you get that money, and you start to grow, and you start to think you're doing the right thing because you're being rewarded, right? Whether it's true or not is irrelevant, but you're being rewarded, and that makes going back even harder because that money starts going down, right? And
Yes. Can you go deeper into that, MG? Because that's what I wanted. This is what I'd like you to go into, because I don't want to break your thought and you're on it. We need to stop pretending like these people are not being influenced by the money. If they make a video and it doesn't make money, they're not going to make a video like that again. They're not going to, exactly. They're not going to go back and do it again, right? It's the same thing. Yeah, I mean, that's the reality, right? So if again, like they said, like Tim was saying about the going after the squad videos that Jimmy was doing, of course, the people with money say, okay, they have operations to do this, troll farms, these when you can buy views, they have the money to do that, right? So if I'm running an operation for some right-wing oligarch, all right, I say, okay, here's $12 million for the year, all right, spend some money. Speculation. Yeah, again, all speculation. But this is we can say it's speculation, but in reality, because we don't have proof. Yeah, we don't have. But remember, we're on a show and we are making statements to the public, so we have to make sure this is speculation. Yeah, I'm not saying that they know what's going on, right? I'm not saying that Jimmy and these other folks know what's going on, right? Okay, this is a social engineering thing, and it works better without their knowledge, right? Like the Tea Party. The Tea Party, that was with their knowledge, right? That's something different, right? But if I want to influence, but did they know that they were being paid for by rich oligarchs? Well, initially, no, because they weren't, right? Because the Tea Party, when the Tea Party first came out, it was about giving money to the banks instead of helping people, right? And then it was slickly shift. Then during that shift into becoming a right-wing mob, right? That may have been. That may have been a case of social engineering, and not everybody knew what was going on, and they just going with the flow, right? And in this case, on the left, if there's a reward coming, right, and you think that the people around you are righteous people, and you think that, okay, I'm a righteous person, I'm attracting righteous people,
this is what makes them happy, it must be the right thing to do, right? And then once you realize what's going on, say, wait a minute, this can't be right. You can't go back because now you done bought a limousine, right? I got to make payments now, right? That changes your thinking, right? And that's that social engineering piece, right? It's just you get rewarded for doing things that a particular group wants you to do, right? There's no reward for, even though it's the right thing to do, to support Black votes, to support our issues, right? There's no reward, and in fact, you may be harmed, right? That's the incentive structure of white supremacy, right?
Meritorious manumissions, huh?
Exactly, right? You if you know you're going to be harmed by helping Black people, even if it's subliminal, right? I know my mom and dad won't really like me helping Black people, but if I go over here and feed the poor, that's okay. But specifically helping Black people, no, that's not going to work, right? That's one of some of the many ways that white supremacy or culture in general feeds itself, right? It keeps it's self-sustaining, right? It's self-sustaining because everybody knows the rules, again, because you've grown up in them, and everybody knows the rules. So like Edie was saying, that's why she knows who her father is, and she knows that her father would incentivize her children to be more like him. Right, because he believes that's the culture. Am I right? Is that a right reading of what you said, Edie?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So yeah, so it's just again, it's a matter of culture. Thank you, Edie. It's a matter of culture, right? And you become acculturated by a system of incentives and disincentives, right? If the incentive is okay, I'm a podcaster. Let's say Brie, and if I say all this, as long as I stay on this race neutral stuff, people keep coming. They keep coming, they get on my Patreon. But the minute I start shifting into ADOS and reparations, oh shit, my numbers start going down, right? That's the incentive and disincentive system. That's a set of incentives and disincentives. And now in the technological era that we're in right now, and in the age of the internet, people with money can manipulate those things very, very easily. Right. So if I have an organization that speaks to 10,000 relatively well-heeled people, right? And I say, hey, I send out email, hey, take a look at this. But when I send you that link, you need to send this person some money, right? and it's really that simple when you have that kind of money, right? And then you send it, and if they say something wrong, man, they really blew it on this one. Right, it's the same email structure, right? But it's carrots and sticks, right? But right now, the right wing is pouring money into the left, and we know that now for a fact, to incentivize people who have a following to do these things, right? And eventually, they're going to wake up and realize, oh shit, how did I get here? If they have a moral core, but over time, that moral core kind of disappears because you're living comfortable. That's my view. Again, we know where the money's coming from. I'm not saying this is why they know why they're doing this and they know why this money's coming, but that incentive structure doesn't change. That's how things stay in place. And people with a following are going to get this same kind of push. And that's all I got. I'm sorry, I took a long time on that one.
No, I thought that was good. Anybody got anything else before we keep running?
Nah, I think we need to get back into the video because we have barely.
Scratch service, yeah.
This one, yeah.
I wonder what your thoughts are on that as a leftist. Is there an incompatibility with wanting to have a broad multiracial coalition and a kind of insistence? I mean, you're dealing with a really narrow extreme part of the country. So I don't want to say that every conservative or every Trump voter is implicated in this conversation, but do you ever feel like there's a tension between kind of the need to coalition build and a perception of a certain segment of society as kind of untouchable?
I don't feel that tension. I understand that other people do. I'm in the Punch a Nazi School of Applied Mechanics. I have no sympathy for these people. And it's not just at a personal peak. Because people talk about deprogramming, de-radicalization. Every time I give a book talk, 4 or 5 of the questions are about can't we just kumbaya, de-radicalizing, like you have no idea what goes into de-radicalization. Like genuinely, like de-radicalization, this magical term that people use constantly, is a years-long process, requires, people to be mentally ready to leave. It's like analogous to quitting smoking. It's fucking hard. And sometimes people might want to kill you for leaving, and so you have to be really fucking ready to leave. And most people don't want to. They enjoy it. They enjoy the cruelty. They enjoy the camaraderie. They feel community. They feel acceptance, right? So I think, if you're willing to engage in a years-long emotional connection of extraordinary strength, to the point where I've heard of like people marrying their de-radicalizers or spending years having dinner with their de-radicalizers, only to like eventually maybe arrive at a sort of tenuous former status. If you're prepared to do that, fine. That's not scalable. What is scalable is saying like these sentiments are unacceptable. You cannot show up in my town. You cannot show up in my university. I think that many people want to kumbaya because for them, the prospect of like standing up and like fucking punching a Proud Boy is uncomfortable. And they want to see themselves as more tolerant. And like, I mean, for me, at least, I'm like, cool, your conception of yourself as tolerant and marketplace of ideas-y and willing to coalition build, whatever, like matters more to you than my safety and the safety of like all the marginalized people that these people attack. Like I really, if I sound angry, it's because I'm an angry person. I'm also quitting smoking and also fuck a Nazi. Like fuck them.
Okay,
I don't care about them. I don't care about their lives. I want them to die. Like I really am just like, I have no patience. No patience. Like, and the more we socially marginalize these views, the more we make them unacceptable, the fewer people will join. If you deplatform someone, if you play whack-a-mole enough, like you make it annoying and difficult, you dox people, you get them their jobs lost for holding these views publicly, for saying that they want to burn Jews and kill, N-words. You make it socially absolutely poison to do these things.
So is there evidence of that, Talia? Is there evidence that approach, because you say that the approach you're describing is scalable and the de-radicalization approach isn't. But what strikes me is that it seems like there has been a radicalization approach that has been taking years. The radicalizers are happy to take years and pursue this project.
I know y'all got thoughts because she really sounds like she's saying we should spend the next 5-10 years deprogramming Nazis versus knocking on the doors of non-voters and getting them to join our coalition. So who would like to go first? Just I feel like you got words and go ahead. Please start, and whoever wants to go after him, jump in and I'll be quiet.
My goodness. Where do I start? First of all, she called these people untouchables in society. This is one of the most organized and well-oiled machines in American history. These people have infiltrated every level of American government and law enforcement, according to the FBI.
Yes.
What are you talking about? These people are untouchable. These people are very well trained, very well armed. What do you mean? And they have an entire community. They have churches. They have whole towns of these people. Sundown towns are still a thing.
Yes.
I don't know how much more you can have and still be considered on the outskirts of society.
Yeah. We're back in incentives and disincentives, right? That's their community, right? That's why social controls work, right? Like she said, it goes as far as people will kill you if you try to leave, right? You can be ostracized, you can lose your job, right? And that's why it helps that they're so well funded and so well organized, right? Mm-hmm. So they can exist in a society outside of the controls of regular society. That's what the money does. That's what the wealth does, right?
Like the judge who just got indicted for the Ahmaud Arbery, right?
Yeah.
For trying to cover up that shit.
Exactly. If she doesn't get locked up, she's going to get a job at some think tank or something, right? She's going to get paid for this, right? It's just like when a cop kills somebody when they can still GoFundMe for hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? This is a way to undermine the disincentives that our society should be inflicting on these people, right? Because people can think right wingers are the caricature that Brie is using of some toothless oaf living under a bridge, and that's what these right wing Nazis look like, is completely a caricature. Right? Talia knows exactly who they are. They're well-funded. They're violent. They are again, as Joey said, they are interwoven into the halls of power in this country. Right? This is nothing to play with. All this to undermine us. That's how wild this is. Man. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Anybody?
Yeah. I think it's kind of like humorous that Brianna is acting as if this is something that just started a few decades ago.
Yeah.
And had a plan. And no, if you go back, like early on in American history, like we could go into the Bacon Rebellion thing. We could go how, white people who worked with Black people were tarred and feathered, and they were linked with us. Like, they were socially engineered to not want to ally with us. And we see that is something that actually works. When you ostracize people enough, then they don't want to actually be in a certain type of group. I mean, even when you listen to Edie talk about like her family, like if the roles were reversed, where the majority, like of the people in her hometown were ostracizing the people who are promoting the white supremacist stuff, you would see less of them. Like the reason why we have allies that are afraid of like truly taking on the fight, or I wouldn't say allies, I would say people who potential allies who are afraid of taking on the fight, because realize that there is like there's like ramifications for doing that. Like they can be locked out, not by us, but they're going to be locked out by mainstream white society. Like their circles, I shouldn't say mainstream white society, but their circles, their community. Like there's a possibility of them losing friends. There's a possibility of them, all types of shit happening to them for taking on a fight for our justice. We know that this strategy works. It's just that the strategy has been implemented in American society in the reverse.
Ooh, that's so good, Mud.
Yeah, that's all.
I want to.
Hey, this is MG from Reset Race. We're growing and so is our mission. Because of this, we're looking for volunteers to join our team. The skills we need most right now are researchers, video editors, and men and women to do voiceovers. If you're interested in helping out, go to actifypress.com/volunteer. Again, actifypress.com/volunteer. We hope to hear from you soon. Peace and justice from myself and the rest of the Reset Race crew.
There is actually a prejudice between different nationalities. Like, there was this Italian boy in our room, and there was this Irish boy, and I was actually shocked to find them at odds. I said, well, you guys are, you know, you're both white. I mean, what is it? He said, well, you know, the Dagos want everything. And the guy said, well, those Irish, you know how they are. They think, you know, they think the world's theirs, you know. And I was actually shocked. So you can't say, you know, narrow it down to just one race or one creed. It's everyone. Everyone has done this sometimes. Even, you know, you have.
Okay, saying that everybody is guilty of it, I mean, why don't we start teaching it now so that we won't make the same mistake over again rather than teach whatever?
Don't say the church. That's the church who is
why
responsible.
doesn't the church start teaching?
That's what we're saying. We're holding the church responsible. Religion in general.
The people, religion, it's not the religion, it's the people.
I mean, the people make up the church, don't they? The church doesn't make up itself.
You can tell the love of Jesus. You can say he died for all.
I think the Christian community has a great opportunity today to really help change the climate. You know the myth that the white man is inherently superior to the black man? This myth has plagued us for such a long time. To take these myths and to listen to the facts and perhaps to let go of them. For you and I know that it was not the white man, and it was not the white church, but it was the Negro. It was the Negro church which initiated this struggle in this quest for justice and love among men. What kind of attitudes are you sharing with others, your friends, your children, when it comes to race relations? What is your race relations vocabulary? I've heard so many Christians use the word nigger. By what we say, by how we act, we teach, we witness.
Well, thank you, Pastor Youngo. I know we have heard and seen a lot today, and we Christians need to be up and doing. I know that. Thank you.
The few particulars that make Omaha different from New York are just incidental. The problem exists because white people think they're better than black people, and they want to oppress us, and they want us to allow ourselves to be oppressed.
This is the I agree with you perfectly. This is the basic problem.
Then what do you
that white people think they're better than others?
I can't solve the problem. You guys pull the strings that close schools. You guys draw the boundaries that keep our kids restricted to the ghetto. You guys write up the restrictive covenants that keep us out of houses. So it's up to you to talk to your brothers and your sisters and persuade them that they have a responsibility. We've assumed ours for over 400 years, and we're tired of this kind of stuff now. We're not going to suffer patiently anymore. No more turning the other cheek. No more blessing our enemies. No more praying for those who despitefully use us. We're going to show you that we've learned the lessons you've taught us. We've studied your history, and you did not take over this country by singing "We Shall Overcome." You did not gain control of the world like you have it now by dealing fairly with a man and keeping your word. You're treaty breakers, you're liars, you're thieves, you rape entire continents and races of people. Then you wonder why these very people don't have any confidence or trust in you. Your religion means nothing. Your law is a farce, and we see it every day. You demonstrated it in Alabama. And I can say you because you're part of the whole system. You profit from it. In fact, you make your living from it. You couldn't walk around and talk to people, stand up in your pulpit on Sunday and preach nice little songs and say, now we're going to give thanks to the Lord for he is good and old Jesus be among us. As far as we're concerned, your Jesus is contaminated, just like everything else you tried to force upon us is contaminated.
Well,
so you can have him. And here's what I'll say, I wish you would follow Jesus like we followed him. Because if you did that, then we'd be in charge tomorrow. I think the problem is so bad that we can have no understanding at all.
You think it's gotten to the point where there can never be that reconciliation?
No. You talk about justice, and it means one thing to you, and we talk about it and it means something else to us. And it'll always be that way. And I'd like you to know I have a terrible feeling against preachers because I think you guys are the ones who are largely responsible for the problem in the first place. And you can accept it or not any way you choose. And for you, this may be an excursion, you know, across the line.
What about the person that
wants to listen. I genuinely feel that I want to listen.
Well, if you listen and try to do something, you get kicked out of your church. See, that's the way your people are.
Well, we do make changes like that. I mean, so the changes that have come have been drastic.
God bless you, little brother. Come back and see us again sometime. And don't look back in anger. Thanks for taking it so well. He thought we were going to do in here like they do to us. If we went in one of their places, everybody would have jumped out their chairs and got some ropes together and hung one of us. We couldn't even go in one of their places like this.
Yeah, right. Bobby, just a minute. Telephone on, son. Well, here's where we are. We've confessed our sins. We've tried to open up and say, doggone it, we did this. We did do it. We're all guilty, terribly guilty. But what do we do now? Do we sit around in despair? If we do, then let's all knock ourselves off and get the heck off the earth. Or do we try to live together and work out a better life? I would see an interracial exchange of couples as something sponsored or encouraged by our social ministry committee to actually promote better human relations.
If 10 couples would take the time and the trouble to go into a Negro home with a sister church using Hope Lutheran.
Sacrificing to attempt to start with this problem that hasn't been introduced apparently too well in our congregation.
We're not running around proselyting Negro members. We simply want the understanding because of the fact they are in our community. Of course, how far away are they?
Together as a people.
How far away are they, Bill? Not over 2 blocks, are they?
3 blocks, we have Negro families living.
But I feel there's so many areas that we could work in. There are a tremendous number of places. And why pick this one to start out with? In 100 years, the Social Ministry Committee has done nothing, and now we start out with the most controversial issue we could.
Well, Ray, there are many other things we could look for and find to do, but is there anything more important, any problem more crucial right now?
2 board members said this will split the church wide open, and now you're asking me, am I afraid to present this to the council? You're speaking of my church. You know.
I'm convinced that the ministry of reconciliation that we've talked so long about, that takes place so seldom in the church, can only take place if people learn that they can take different sides of the issue and still forgive one another and love
But
one
now
another.
we're talking about, let's gamble now, unprepared as the congregation is,
right.
And take a gamble on this.
That's right. Say we propose it. Say there's a real explosion among the council members. What do we lose by proposing it as a proposal of the social ministry?
What if we lose? What have we lost?
We lost.
Those who oppose us will go home and say, well, you know, what are these clowns doing down there, you know? And they'll go home and they'll talk about it. And at least they'll think about it. And I see where we have lost nothing, actually.
Now, I'm not saying, I didn't say no, let's not present it. We have discussed this as a committee a number of times, and you've reinforced our thinking. And yet we're suggesting proposing this to the board without this education. You're asking for a pretty tough decision, and I just soon put it off.
I'm not going to give you a chance to discuss it anymore. I'm simply going to ask you how you vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so tomorrow night at the council meeting, we'll see what kind of reaction we get.
Why be so revolutionary and upheaval and let's take one step at a time.
Do you think that this would be so revolutionary and so repugnant to them that we'd lose some people? The mere fact that on a voluntary basis we would say 10 couples, let's say.
Are greatly concerned about it.
they figure and feel that this church might become integrated, and like Bob said, their exodus will be right out of here. They don't see why we should go and keep harping on this idea of civil rights continually. And they're looking for a little let-up instead of continued agitation. That's what I've heard.
If we lose 100 members, I would not like to see this. I think we would destroy what we have built up here in our church over a good many years. And this would be bad, because we've got a good, strong congregation here, a very faithful congregation. Now let's keep them intact while we make progress.
I'm sure that we're all aware of the touchiness of this situation. Boy, I belong to this church about as long as anybody here. And I realize what we're can involve ourselves with, but I also think that it's for the good of the church, or I would never be involved in it.
I'll have to admit that it took them till 12:20 last night as a committee to convince me that this congregation could meet the challenge. And I'm rather embarrassed now that I didn't have more faith than I expressed last night.
But I would hate to see any artificial movement which would affront either, and I hate to use the term side, which would hold back better relations.
I think there has to be a more general approach to this thing first. Now, I don't know exactly what that approach should be, but I may be clear off base.
If we do not start now as a church, the world is going to pass us by on the biggest issue of our lifetime. And I perhaps am being over dramatic when I suggest, where were the people of Germany when the issue of the Jews came up? Where was the church, both Catholic and Lutheran? How did they answer it? And Walt, you say, let's take a step at a time. This is the smallest step we know of. Dialogue, talking with one another, understanding. Let's not look back on history and say the church had nothing to do when the integration problem was around.
Well, it's going to be done on an individual basis.
Individual
anyway,
basis, yes, individual basis. That probably is all right.
And you couldn't take a lesser step, Harry.
Yeah.
You couldn't take it. You realize, as a church, we're behind business.
Yes, I agree with you.
All right.
I agree with you.
What a ridiculous thing for the church as a Christian body to say on a moral issue, we're behind business. See?
And yet there are members of the congregation and are entitled to consideration. I don't say they're right.
Have a little more liberal attitude towards this thing, although I can't say that I'm completely swung around to it. I mean, I've got some reservations. My concern is the reaction of the congregation, how they're going to take this thing. I mean, that's my real concern.
There's a church that we're thinking about celebrating its 100th anniversary, and we're wondering if it's going to hold together through such a trial as 10 members visiting into the homes of 10 members of other churches that happen to be colored. 100 years of preaching, where has it gone? Where has it gone?
Well, it's going to be real interesting to see, I tell you.
Before the interracial visits had a chance to take place, our congregation was involved in controversy as a result of an activity taken part in by our high school class.
They tell you about sitting in small groups, sitting groups of twos and threes.
Don't worry, I'm not sitting by myself.
No, I don't want you to sit by yourself, but we don't want to all sit together as a...
This Sunday morning high school class is studying this year the faith and worship of other churches. On the Sunday morning devoted to Presbyterianism, they visited one of our neighboring Presbyterian churches, Calvin Memorial. Calvin happens to be one of the churches involved in the planning of the interracial visits. They attended the worship service and had a brief discussion after the service. Several weeks later, the teenagers from Calvin were invited to visit Augustana.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I later learned that one family had not permitted their teenage daughter to attend class, and another family, on seeing the youth from Calvin, drove away to attend another church.
Free will, he can either condemn himself to hell, or he can.
After class, they were asked if they would like to stay for worship. They decided to stay, and it was announced from the pulpit that the class was visiting. I noticed no particular consternation over their presence. Monday, I received a letter from a family which was considering leaving the church. I learned at a subsequent council meeting that there was strong opposition from a number of men on the council to this exchange of visits. It was finally suggested that this kind of activity be stopped.
Do I understand you correctly to say that a good number of the members were disturbed by the visitation?
Well, this amazes me and amazed Ted, too. Ted made the comment this afternoon in my study that a number of people that he never dreamed would reacted this way. He was dumbfounded.
I think here you're getting a true reaction. They're responding from what they really feel. And I think analyzing this, you'll come up with the answer as to what type of people you have in your church. How does this, in fact, affect you? This would indicate to me how you really feel and whether you have the stamina to face up to your own congregation.
I don't feel at all threatened. I told Eileen at supper time tonight I have a strange feeling of peace inside, really. In other words, I don't want to run away. I want to stay and live through this with the people. Unless, as Ted intimated, it could get to the point where the whole congregation was split, and then I suppose the Synod president would come in and say, well, Bill...
May I say, 3 other ministers have been exiled from the city of Omaha during the year of '65, who were no less outspoken than yourself. And I certainly can do no less than admire you for the smile that you're able to carry at this moment when I point this out. I feel that you're the man that fits the bill for the job. It's not an easy one, and you certainly go with my blessings.
Thanks so much. I hope will you come to my council meeting next time?
Well,
You want him to speak for you?
People are a little more inclined to talk and say what they mean. The fewer
2 days after the teenagers from Calvin Memorial visited Augustana, the interracial visit committee met with the representatives of Hope Lutheran and Calvin Memorial. Ted and I had been influenced by people that indicating that they were upset, and particularly with Sunday's visit from the kids from Calvin Memorial.
Sunday, when we had your class.
I guess we just got cold feet.
So I don't want to be abrupt, but I would like to know whether or not we're going to have the visitations that we plan. How many would like to have it, or how many do not? That's what we would like to know.
But I think we should have it. But I don't think it can be done in November, Pastor.
December would be too busy. That's
Usually we find time to do what we want to do, you know.
That's what I mean. We've got to, it's not important that we go out and get a few people. It's how we get them. That they come...
And how can we judge who's ready for an experience of this kind?
How they come, they're ready.
Yes.
Well, I would assume that most of our council people would profit from this kind of involvement.
Bill, you'd get less than... You'd get less than a fourth of them.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of, but this is their need. Yeah. This is our need.
I'm talking about on a volunteer basis, you'd get less than a fourth. Well, maybe a fourth.
Well, then we'd have to go after them, and maybe you and Ray could, say, talk 2 or 3 council members.
If a visit from a group of Negro teenagers has so disturbed our congregation, it seems to me then that we need to travel at a different pace or use a different strategy. We just need more time.
Go with them first, but let's not be too optimistic what we're going to get from them. Let me put it that way.
Yes. I mean, I'm not going to say because some people in the church, you know, said, well, I'll leave. I'm not going to condemn the whole church. I said, well, the persons who did it are rotten. You know, I'm not going to hide the fact that I think, you know, they're wrong. And, well, they don't belong in, no, I'm not going to say they don't belong in a church because the church is a place to learn.
Were you joining a church where you know you were upsetting the people because of your presence there?
Good. Well, that's a difficult question.
Religious. I don't think they're Christians at all because you're supposed to love your fellow man if you're not doing it.
I do think the church does have a real responsibility to people like this because I read someplace where a church isn't really a show place for saints, it's a hospital for sinners. And so if a person hates another person, where is he going to learn the opposite if it's not in church?
We've got a ministry even to those you see who are not quote, enlightened, end quote.
I don't think you can spare them from the tension and the conflict.
Well, we will have tension. But how do we take care of these who are not yet ready to go along with us? This is the concern, and I think we have to face up to this in our churches. How do we as churchmen now minister to these particular people to help them? Because we don't want to lose them. If we lose them, we can't even minister to them at all.
This one lady said to me, Pastor, she said, I want them to have everything I have. I want God to bless them as much as he blesses me. I says, Pastor, I just can't be in the same room. It just bothers me. How are you going to change this? I can't sit there and give her a sermon to change it.
I live out west near Walt's Church, not too far from it. Supposing one of our homes in this neighborhood becomes available and a family comes in and they can't meet it economically. So another Negro family moves in with them, and all of a sudden we've got 2 or 3 families in a given house. Nothing can lead more quickly to the deterioration of a neighborhood than multiple family residents in an area that's supposed to be single family.
In fact, right where I'm living, we have quite a few Mexicans that have, and it's the same thing, the same problem that we have with the colored people. I mean, their property deteriorates, looks bad.
What can we do as pastors to prevent that which could be deteriorating?
We have to give the right facts to people so that the myths can be dispelled. Now, the mayor attacked this question very directly. He said that when there is no panic selling in the neighborhood, the real estate values do not go down, and major housing studies have proved this.
It's a matter of some of this being a myth. You can never sell that to some of my people because they experienced loss of sale of $1,000, $2,000 already.
Where? What neighborhood?
From moving from 49th to western Omaha. I've had conversation with some of the neighbors and the like, and it wasn't all positive, and especially since there were some that seemed to have nervous reactions about it and fear and so on. And so this immediately poses this problem. How are you going to face these type of people? Because I'm not big enough to overcome their emotional strains when some of these things happen, much as we would want to embrace any other race on an equal basis and the like. Because these people still have their problems.
Okay, now they claim that one reason they don't want colored people living in their neighborhoods because, you know, they let the property go down and they bring down the valuation of their property. But any person that has enough money to buy a house and want a nice house has enough spunk about him to keep his place up. I mean, so it's not that they are scared that their property will go down. It's just that they don't want them out there. That's the way I look at it.
This is true, but these people have a kind of self-deception. You know, they believe, they've circulated these myths so long that they've begun to believe them. And once you believe them, as they say, if you define a situation as being real, it will be real in its consequences. And this is just what's happened. They've come to actually believe this. And any evidence to the contrary, he's the exception. But the fact is, all the people who do struggle hard enough to accumulate a down payment, they do want something better for themselves and for their kids, and they hope that their neighbors will be the same kind of people that they are.
A black man fights for the white man, not for himself. He tells you to bleed and you bleed. He said, go bleed in Korea for the white man, and you go bleed because you have to. He tells you to go to Vietnam or Lebanon or Laos, and we have to bleed. Then in Mississippi or Alabama or Omaha, Nebraska, where they're taking our rights and we know who the people are who are taking them, we don't have any blood then. We're radical. Just because we want to get the rights that we fight overseas for so the white man can have. We fight over there to defend his women and children and defend his land from attack. While we're over there fighting for him, our own people are being attacked by the same white people over here we're supposed to be fighting to defend.
Right. Everybody's got something to fight for, right? You got the rights that you fought for. Do you feel that? Do you feel, Sergeant? And I got out.
Do you feel that you're living under those rights now? Why should he go over there and fight the Vietnamese? They've done nothing to him. Working right in this own country, he can go places and he can't even get in a hotel. I mean, and he can drive in a place and might not even be able to get gas if the people don't look at your license plate and see where you're from. That's what he was talking about.
Have you ever been in Hawaii?
Yeah.
What do you think about you? They're black as you are, and I am, right?
Yeah.
Okay then. What a bottle of beer cost you? 80 cents, don't it? Will they speak to you? Because they got long, pretty hair.
No, that's not what. The white men got there and contaminated them.
You can't go to places in Japan, man.
Well, you know what? You know why? The American white men.
Yeah, but the Japanese gonna keep you out of it. Why?
Well, look, man, let me say this now. Even if you go some other over there and they mistreat you, well, you can't feel too bad, because that's not your home. But when you come to your own home and be mistreated, then you really feel mistreated. This is my home here. And if it's being a fight, we should fight here.
Amen. Right.
You know what I mean? Why go over there and fight?
Have you ever been turned away from a hotel by a Vietnamese?
No,
by a Chinese?
No,
a Japanese?
No,
a Korean?
No,
a Lebanese?
No.
How about a white man?
Yeah.
Then if we should fight the man who's hurting us, and the white man is one, and he lives in this country.
My wife and I were watching television, and on the news broadcast, there was a story of the Marines landing in Vietnam. The second boy coming off the landing barge was a Negro. But I say to you that if this boy comes home to Omaha, and he comes to me as the mayor of this city, and he's looking for a job, I say to you that I'm not going to be the mayor who says, well, I'm sorry, young man, you're just not qualified. We can't find a job for you. And if he wants to move his family into a decent home, this mayor is not going to say, I'm sorry, your skin is black. You're condemned to the ghetto for the rest of your life. The most deplorable, the most disgraceful conditions that you can find anywhere in America, you can find a few blocks from where we are. And if this is true, and I know it's true, then I find it so difficult to understand why it's so hard to get the Christian layman in this great city to become involved in this moral issue. And I say to you that if the church will not become involved, then I fear for our future. And I'm here to ask you, in fact, I'm here to beg you to become involved with me as the mayor of this city in a crusade for progress in human relations in our hometown.
Isn't it true that one of the problems in race relations is that we define another person as not being quite human or totally human because he is black? And one of the reasons we do that is because we don't know him as a human being, and we don't have enough positive contact with him.
A child cannot go through high school without daily being in contact in the classroom, at the locker, in the gymnasium, with people of other color. Not necessarily black, but primarily so.
This is still a different relationship.
It's today. We're talking about adults that have grown up and have never had this contact.
But this has been true essentially in the city of Omaha for 40 years.
That's right. I had a colored boy in my swim class at school.
I'm not talking about this kind of, we bump shoulders at the Foot Locker in the high school, this kind of thing. I'm talking about perhaps a more meaningful, in-depth relationship which would really explode the myths that many of us have been sort of held down with our whole lifetime.
Back up a little bit and take a look at the climate that has been created in the last year, and you have an artificial situation now. This is not good.
What do you mean, an artificial?
Enough of the people, I think, in this congregation now are suspicious. This is not good.
What are they suspicious of, Matt?
I suspect they think now that this is a forced integration, and this is not good.
What is a forced integration? I don't get what you...
A forced integration is going out, I suspect, and taking someone, bringing him in, just to say that now we are integrated, now we can brag. We don't want to do this, and I don't feel that this is back of it, but I think the feeling is there.
Well, this would not be bringing groups of Negroes into worship with us. This would be exchange in the homes.
Right. But you see, the climate is not good right now, if I would read the congregation correctly. I think you have to come in the other avenue now and begin serving people in all levels of a social ministry. Whether the person be handicapped, mentally retarded, or whatever, then let's let it grow from that.
Well,
it takes more patience, and this is not easy to come by.
Well, you see, to me, this is the tamest of ministries to increase understanding. Now, this is about as non-controversial way of increasing understanding as you can possibly find. Because it's not forcing anything on anybody.
I convince you would like to have this happen. Correct?
Oh, yes, I would like to see this happen. Now, we might...
What we're saying is that what we'd like to see happen is something that would lead into this without busting it off before it can occur.
This isn't any great big thing, it's just a little thing, really. Maybe the people would blow it up as a big thing. Maybe this is where I'm miscalculating.
There are questions here of timing at this particular time.
Well, see, what I'm saying, Homer, is that if it doesn't come very soon, we found that many Negroes now are antagonistic even to this. Let's say, you want to get together now, after rejecting us, now you want to get together, you want us, and the only basis you can come is say, look what you can do for us. It's more what they can do for us than what we can do for them.
I think this is an indication, too, that timing is not good.
We meet, we talk, and we still conclude it's not the right time. Not the right time for whom? For me? For my parents? For my wife? My son?
Should we pray, John? John first.
Even my parents know the world is changing. That it's not their world anymore.
Lord Jesus, be our guest. Let these gifts to us be blessed. Amen.
Take myself. I know no Negro personally. I've never sat and talked to one honestly. I don't know their problems. How many years do I need to prepare myself in order to talk with another human being?
Ready? Okay.
What am I waiting for?
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Grandpa.
Happy birthday to you.
Within 4 days, my first opportunity to listen came. I guess it was at this, I know it was at this meeting that I began to understand what this urgency that Bill had been preaching and talking to us about all meant.
Which is the bigger threat to American democracy and the Constitution? A Vietnamese mother suckling her child, or a white racist governor in Alabama who says, in so many words, to hell with the Constitution and Johnson and everything else? Which is the greater threat to democracy?
We're in between. We're at the point now where demonstrations don't work anymore. You have only one choice. Race riots, you see, or forget it.
All we're really asking is to have people obey the Constitution. That takes care of it right there. So it could be done overnight. There's no other way to say it.
In other words, if Christians would follow the preachment of the Bible, and if non-Christians or others who did not choose to follow the Bible would follow the Constitution, you're saying that the Negro would have his freedom and would have it instantly.
I have done as much as I know how to do, unless you can tell me some other things I can do to change. I have gone to groups and I've tried to change them. I've tried with my own friends. I've tried with friends in other states. I have spoken before the state legislature. I have gone everywhere I've been asked to go to try to explain or interpret or do anything. I got laughed at by some. I got cold-shouldered by others. I got sneered at by others. I have not been spoken to by many people for years, and personally, I don't give a damn. But I'm simply telling you that's the way it is in Omaha, and that's the way it is in every place in this United States.
And the reason you have so much frustration is that your own white people will not listen to you. And this just bears out what we say. How long has this man been your preacher?
1 year.
All right, then if he's spoken the truth, there's an indication that he hasn't tried to do the right thing. How has his church responded to it? Have they been favorable? Have they said they're going to rededicate themselves and do the right thing toward their black brothers? And there's been no outward change in the attitude of his church members toward him since he started telling the truth on this issue.
Now you're asking, of course, a personal opinion, and I feel the progress has been slow, but
do they react positively or negatively to what he says? They don't do anything then.
I suppose that I would rather not answer that.
Are you a Christian?
Certainly.
You're Christian because you believe in Christ, and you know that he never hesitated to take a position on a moral issue, regardless of who might oppose him.
You're not asking my opinion or my position. You're asking the position of the church. I can only speak for myself. I cannot speak for the church.
Have you observed any change in the church's attitude toward your minister since he began telling the truth on this issue?
I think so, yes.
Now, is it a change that is negative or one that is positive?
Both.
Is it more negative than positive?
The negative element of the argument always seems more dynamic. The people that are opposed to things, I feel, speak up more than those that are
Is his position in his church more secure now than it was before he started telling the truth? Or is it less secure? Do you think he might be considering moving from this locale, or are they perhaps considering moving him from this locale?
We don't remove ministers in that way. A minister's calling to a church is calling of God.
God is directing him to tell the truth according to your faith, more or less.
That's true.
Then if these people, they must all be reacting very positively to him since they feel that God sent him and God is telling him what to say. His word is echoing and mirroring to you what God has on his mind for this congregation. So his position obviously is more secure now than ever before, because he's telling more the truth, right?
I don't believe that any of the apostles' disciples were secure because they followed Christ. I don't recall the percentage, but they didn't all die of old age.
But we're not talking about disciples going to non-believers to bring people from out of the world into the church. We're talking about a Christian church where all the people profess to believe in Christ.
True, you give me an inferiority complex, and this is command of the language.
It's not me giving you an inferiority complex. It's just that you know what the truth is, and you don't want to tell it. We're fighting ignorance in the place where there should be the most enlightenment.
I think that if the church could have waited 350 years to preach true Christianity, as far as I'm concerned, the church could wait forever.
No possibility for repentance.
Oh, I would say that. It would take some great miracle, like little green men landing by the millions from Mars on Earth. This would so shake the white world, they'd forget all about racism. They worry about the green color instead of the black. Something of this dimension would change the white man.
I bet you in our congregation, you could change a lot of people's attitudes just by getting to know them.
Your church is 100 years old, Bill, is that right?
All I'm saying, Earl, is that we have 1,200 white people that don't even know any Negroes, or very few of them do.
When that church returns to where it should have been in the first place, that is the day that I'll walk back into the church. I will give my life to the church. I said, love is my premise.
Yes.
But at the same time...
He talked hate, but his eyes were full of love. But it got to me, and I think this was the first time, too, that I realized days later. It took me days to realize it. But this was what we were suggesting in this visitation, not to encounter Ernie Chambers.
that people could sit down and talk with one another and these same things would come up. We've got our foot raised to take this first step, and we haven't got the guts to complete the step, and once we're on that step, the rest of the ladder is nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I think it's because...
It's the first step that's hard.
I know a lot of people have been bothered by the tension. I feel that now maybe more than when I went through the meetings, because I thought it was a healthy sign and a good sign. Evidently they didn't sleep their full 8 hours when they got home, but I still think through this there's been individual growth.
Oh, there's no question about it.
Corporate growth.
Yes. See, the tension was good that you had, and people of like mind or even openness, who have objective minds. It was good for them. But there are those people who haven't reached this level of understanding yet. And for them, the tension became a stumbling block. And it cost, I think, the rapport or the loss of rapport, the cleavage that we now find existing.
Can't there be rapport, genuine rapport, or relationships with people, even in the midst of this kind of stark honesty?
I would hope so. I would hope so. Of course, I would disagree with you on what stark honesty is. I don't think it's dishonest to be diplomatic, what I call diplomatic. Some other people may call it cowardice, or to be strategic. I don't believe this is...
This confuses me, because then where does the element of the prophetic come into our ministry?
Well, can't one still do this and be prophetic?
Well, I think one of the elements of prophetic ministry is honesty.
Well, I don't think this other is dishonesty. I don't believe, well, here's an illustration. If you might well tell a woman that she's ugly and be honest, but it's not dishonest to say nothing. See, it could be honest if you were to say it, but it's not dishonest to refrain from saying it.
What you're telling me then, as I hear it, really, is that my way is just not the way for Augustana Church.
Well, this is what it appears to be now, doesn't it?
Well, I think that most ministers are too afraid. There are more that
But there are some.
There are some, but they're not enough. I mean, I don't see how a minister
Well, it's really the church's fault, because they know if they do speak out, they're liable to lose their job.
But the minister is pledged to preach the word of God, and if he doesn't do it, I mean, then why is he a minister?
Well, you've got to look at it as economic
standpoint.
Because if he speaks out for what he believes, and the church doesn't believe it, he's going to be out.
So he should compromise everything he believes and everything that Christ taught, because...
Well, I don't want to lose those people in my church. I don't want to have a church anymore.
You said that I shouldn't compromise.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what.
All right, but then when I said that I didn't see how you could betray someone's race, and you say I'd be compromising my race or something, well, then what's the difference? I mean, if the minister who's gone to seminary and everything, and he's pledged to teach the word of Christ to his congregation, I mean, if he's too afraid to stand up and do it, I mean, how can he call himself a minister?
He can't. I'm agreeing with you. He's betraying his congregation then. He's betraying himself. He's betraying God.
Well, if you listen and try to do something, you get kicked out of your church. Honest if you were to say it, but it's not dishonest.
That's the way your people are. Church, so if you sincerely believe everything you say, don't tell it to a black man because you're in the wrong uniform. You go among your own people, and you say to them, you say to us, and then when they shoot you,
the tension became a stumbling block.
I think there has to be a more general approach to this.
They won't accept me because your people are what they are. We won't accept you either, but there are Negroes.
The only ministry tolerated is the ministry who's totally committed for these white or black.
Educate our members.
Churches are unnecessary. The churches out there in the street.
Why be so revolutionary?
Picking up those people, then you're being an effective.
I don't think it's dishonest to be diplomatic or to be strategic. I don't believe this is
not from where you think
dishonest.
Very good. Nice to see you again. I saw you all last...
The whole thing came to a head here about a week ago when a power structure within the group, within the church, forced him to resign.
We go to a meeting Tuesday night, and we're told we don't want the preacher. You know, we all looked at each other, and we couldn't understand it, and we thought, how could this little tiny group go and say for the whole church, we don't want you?
This is the thing. People have called and complained because they have complaints. But we who agreed with our pastor, we didn't have any reason to call and complain.
Here's a man that tried to do something. to make the church something besides stone and stained glass windows and air-conditioned sanctuary. And
the people have said the church used to be so peaceful before Bill Youngdahl came. The stained glass windows, the music, this all adds to the service.
The stained glass windows too.
Granted, honey, this all adds to the worship service. I'm not condemning it. I'm not condemning it. But this isn't the peace that Christ was talking about. This is the wrapping paper.
As far as I can see, Pastor Youngdahl has preached love of humanity.
I'm not as much concerned about what happened to Bill Youngdahl and Augustana Lutheran Church as a congregation as I am in what I see this representing as the church.
My only point is, I think we should try new ways, June. I think we've got to communicate. We haven't. We look back and we say we've been so perfect.
I know, but I've got answers, but I can't explain them now.
How do you get something done? Where do we go? I'm frankly more than upset, a little frightened.
This has just gone on too long. I can't do it.
Little did I dream 1 week ago that I would resign as pastor of Augustana Lutheran Church. I was told that a group of members wanted a change of pastor. They indicated that this was not a case of liking or disliking the pastor. The word mismatch was used.
Happy New Year, Judy.
I was told that people were staying away from church because they do not want to hear what I am saying.
Okay, you're going to make it, though. Oh, yeah. Happy New Year, Jack.
The conclusion is that the gospel as they conceive it was not being preached. As I resign as pastor of Augustana, let me confess again my faith in a God who calls men to be in a company of the committed. That our obedience is to the Christ who stands, as always, in the hectic confusion of the marketplaces of the world. That our ministry is centered not in the midst of stained glass windows, but in the areas of life where men reach out for justice, love, and understanding. That I have not made this clear to some of you is apparent. But I have proclaimed the gospel as I have been led to proclaim it. And who is to deny that God expresses his word through a person uniquely? Certainly, God does not intend a man to be phony, speaking only those things that he thinks people want to hear. I ask that you accept tonight my resignation as pastor of Augustana Lutheran Church.
All right, so this proves my point, that we had the response tonight because there is a controversy now, and it's brought out, an expression from people. So it's not his preaching alone that did it. The dramatic resignation prompted people to reassess themselves as to the ministry of the church.
Absolutely.
And it took only that took the dramatic resignation.
Well,
that gets people to think.
Well, to get me to think.
Well, you're...
But where was I? Where was I backing Bill Youngdahl when the board had shrugged their shoulders knowingly that we were going to meet with Hope Lutheran and talk about these interracial visits? Do you recall this? You didn't tell us not to do it. It was and we were left with wrestling with this, Ted and I, and we didn't have the gumption to follow through. We were told, Ted and I, that if we suggest this, we're going to split this church wide open, simply because we're asking Lutherans to meet Lutherans in their homes. Take this out of my mind and show me that this is irrelevant to the situation.
No one has ever said this is wrong. No one has ever said it ought not be done. But you must put one more thing in here. When that suggestion came out, the timing was absolutely bad.
You're still saying the same thing. That let's talk about it. But show me something. Show me a concrete result. Show me a concrete forward step. Show me something that has resulted.
Yes, there's been a regression. There's been a regression.
But the situation is becoming more urgent. That's what the regression is.
Then
that
how do
the
you
civil
tackle
rights
that
law was
situation?
passed.
Right.
It is a fact that it is against the law to close the doors of this church. We can be fined by the United States government or imprisoned for closing the doors to colored people today. Can we not?
Ray, this church's doors will never be closed to colored people. Never.
In our
Physically,
hearts,
I agree
in our
with
hearts.
you.
No one's going out there and put a big padlock.
Question in
but
reality.
until we as Christians accept them in our hearts and help them come.
And Ray, let's be specific now. What can you do then? You can continue to minister to these people, hoping that they will change their hearts, and this you must do. Now, the question is, what is the most strategic way to get people to change their hearts? How do you do this? This is the burning question and the issue that stands before this church today.
But when
you're committed, how do you get other people to have the same commitment that you do?
I think this is the issue, that when you stand before Jesus Christ and admit that within your heart you are a sinner, that you've got this area that you cannot cope with because you have a hard time loving and accepting these people, you must confess that you are wrong in the sight of God.
Right.
And then someone comes along and pats your shoulder and say, "No, wait a minute, you're not all wrong. Let's compromise. You know, Christ might be a little bit wrong, and let's come together a little bit in the middle and make a nice package because, you know, we need the money for the church and this and that." No, we've got to make a clean cut. When you stand before Christ as an individual, this congregation seems to think corporately we're going to go up and knock on the pearly gates and say, hey, the group from Augustana's here. I'll swing open the gates.
Well, Ray, how many colored folks have you brought into the church?
Me, I'm scared to death.
Why?
Why? I have but understood this problem 2 short weeks. 2 weeks. I am just such an infant that I know nothing other than the urgency.
All right,
that is
now you see the urgency, Ray. Now it behooves you to remember it took you, I don't know how old you are, so many years to get to this point. Other people have not reached this point. They're not going to get to it overnight. They're not going to get to it.
There isn't many more nights left.
What if that night would have come before you changed then?
Cannot evaluate the intangible change in people. All we can do is evaluate the tangible once it takes effect.
Let me ask you, what is my position right here? For example, this Missouri Lutheran thing came in the house the other day. They start out by quoting Martin Luther, "Here I stand," that he takes a stand. And then it goes on talking, in the experience of every child of God, there comes a time when you must take the one alone stand against the stand the world has taken. Where are you going to meet this? You're going to meet it on the college campus, you're going to meet it on the streets, on the factory, and guess where else? You're going to meet it in your church. And what must you do? You must take the stand.
Absolutely.
All right, now where do I go from here?
Take your stand.
I got to cut out these publications. They're getting me too excited. They get me too steeped up with doing something.
A power to set me free, I know it's there. A power to tear down walls, hear every voice that calls. Let me find the power in me. There is a brother in me somewhere. I've got to set him free. I know he's there. He'll set my soul aflame if I can find his name. Let him speak, the brother in me. There is a song in me somewhere of peace and harmony. I know it's there. A song to fill the air for people everywhere. Let me find the song in me. There is a fire in me somewhere, a fire to set me free. I know it's there. Let it fill my hand, let it sweep the land. Let me find the fire in me. There is a power in me somewhere, a power to set me free. I know it's there. apart to tear down walls, hear every voice that calls, let me find the power in me.
Listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put it back on the grill again, we grilling them. Back on the grill again, we grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. Adolph need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. Lineage go back to US Southern plantations. Lineage, Jim Crow and mass incarceration. Redlining lynchings, we are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one, cousin mother intellectual. Samantha bringing fire, anti-black, we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country, the win, you need our energy. You gon' see? Listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Put them back on the grill again, we grilling them. Back on the grill again, we grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. Adolph need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.
Until you do right by me, everything you think about is gonna crumble.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.